Hello everyone and welcome back to AustinPlus, and today we are asking a very question because sequels are everywhere. If a movie is successful, a sequel is always guaranteed or almost guaranteed. And if there is a sequel that works, it turns into a trilogy, spin-offs, maybe even a full cinematic universe, if you know what I'm saying. But at some point a question always comes up. Are sequels actually making the franchises better, or that is slowly ruining them? So today we are answering the question is, do sequels ruin a franchise? Because I personally hate sequels. Depends. I don't like sequels mainly because they tend to ruin stuff. And I like prequels, but I don't like sequels. But because sequels have a 70-30% chance of actually being a success. So without further ado, let's get into it. So first of all, why do sequels exist in the first place? Sequels exist because success creates demand, from a business perspective, continuing a proven property is far safer than taking the risk on something that's original. Studios benefit from built-in audiences, familiar characters, and established worlds, which makes marketing easier and financial returns more predictable. And it's not just about the storytelling, it's from the business and reducing risk and maximizing profit. Secondly, sequels actually improve a franchise. Sequels can improve a franchise, but it depends on how it's done. Now, prequels, good, but sequels can strengthen a franchise when they build on what worked rather than simply repeating it. So if you find the stepping stones, you can utilize those stepping stones to make new ones, if you get what I mean. So instead of making continuous breakdowns after breakdown after breakdown, you are making another subsection of and making it its own section. And the best way to describe it is the middle. They started with the middle for Star Wars. The Star Wars, it started with episode 4, 5, and 6, and then we went to 1, 2, and 3. Two very different trilogies. They took place in the same universe, but they all came back with a thin line and a straight line of understanding. And then it all fucked up with Force Awakens, Last Jedi, and Rise of Skywalker, or just the rise of stupidity. But all of that was it was its own thought experiment, I guess, is probably the best. It's its own thing. So it takes place within a name, Star Wars, but also it takes up the idea of being its own thing. Like the movies are their own thing. They are based off something but they're their own source of entertainment. However, the third trilogy just basically started to bring all of those elements together and then basically puked them out onto a script, and that's what we got. That's just a tiny rant of how sequels don't work and how they hurt a franchise. But yeah, anyway, sequels can strengthen a franchise when they build on what worked rather than simply repeating it, and allowing the world to expand the characters and evolve into meaningful ways. In some cases, sequels deepen the story, raise the stakes, and redefine the original concept of turning a good idea into something iconic. When done well, they don't feel like extensions, but they actually feel like necessary next chapters, something we want to see more of, and how this continues, like a continuation until it inevitably ends. But when sequels really start to hurt a franchise, it hurts hard, and it's not a case of it's an even medium or you can forget this one project. No, usually because it has a avalanche effect. The problem begins when sequels exist without a clear creative purpose. They are there for the sake of money and entertainment, and often repeating the same structure, character arcs, or plot beats until the story starts to feel really predictable. As stakes increase artificially, a spectacle becomes the more of the focus, and the emotional core can weaken, and over time, the franchise can lose the identity and what made it stand out in the first place. Now, another example I'm going to pull out of the bag here is Toy Story 5. Hasn't released yet, however, I think I said what they were doing is absolutely thick as, but I've changed my mind. That is a good way. Don't get me wrong, they could have ended it already, but they didn't need to do it at number 4, but they did it anyway. That one was a bit unnecessary. But this 5th one, I think it shows the appropriate revolution of how entertainment also evolves, rather than just the idea of the franchise to start with. They're using the same characters, but it's got a different meaning every time. The fourth one still baffles me, but the fifth one makes sense because there's one line that sticks with me, and it's in the trailer. It's toys are for... I think it's like toys are for kids, but technology's for everyone, because the idea is around iPad kids and all, and how iPads are taking over toys, which is true to an extent. The next film should be Lego. No, but yes, tech is taking over, and that idea it's evolving, because when Toy Story first came out, obviously that was never a thing, but it is taking over and it is making an impact. So I think that shows that there is an even balance when it comes to hurting a franchise, but I think number 4, it really hurt a franchise, but it's Disney Pixar. They obviously made a fuckload of money anyway, but it's still evolving with the times, and it's still doing very well. But again, that's the end of that rant. So the problem with endless franchises and endless like modern like media is that modern franchises rarely stop when the story naturally ends, and instead just continues expanding far beyond their original scope. Marvel and Star Wars have done it right. You can't go around not making mistakes. I think that's a good life experience. You have to make mistakes because that's just life, isn't it? But Marvel have learned from their mistakes, and they're starting to recover. That recovery process probably will take a while. Same with Star Wars. They've been through that stage since 2019, and they're only starting to come out the other side. So things take time, but at least they're learning, and at least they're still continuing and giving us amazing projects like The Mandalorian and Grogu, for example. This often leads to narratives being stretched or reset, where consequences lose meaning and characters' arcs can feel recycled. But when a story keeps going simply because it can rather than because it should, it risks becoming very unnecessary. So it was when they did these one season stuff for Marvel, everyone really didn't like it, but then they started to do some more season stuff, so Wonder Man, Daredevil, Loki, and all of it did very well. And they did the way they're ending it and all is great, but they're also leaving room for opportunities, but not major ones. Man, we're still recovering from shit from 2020. So with these sequels, nostalgia and storytelling are two very important things, because many sequels rely heavily on nostalgia, bringing back familiar characters, references, and iconic moments to create what worked before. While this can be effective in the short term, it often replaces the meaningful storytelling with familiarity, shifting the focus from creating something new to reminding audiences of what they already liked. And audiences and expectations can often lead to fatigue. As audiences become more aware of franchises' patterns, repetition becomes easier to spot, and the interest can start to decline massively. Now, when viewers feel like they've seen the same story before, emotional investment drops and excitement for the future installments fades, leading to what is often described as the franchise fatigue, which you can see often enough these days, which is unfortunate, but a lot of franchises will unfortunately go through them. It's how you recover from them. As I said, if you make mistakes, fair enough. So is it always the franchise or the sequel's fault? Sequels themselves aren't inherently the problem, because a well-made sequel with clear vision can enhance a franchise rather than damage it. But the real issue lies in the intention behind them to start with, because projects that are driven purely by a continuation of profit tend to feel hollow compared to those driven by the storytelling and the idea of the whole franchise, because some of them are just a cash grab. So when should a franchise actually stop? One of the hardest decisions in storytelling is knowing when to end, and the strongest franchises are often the ones that recognize when their story has reached a natural conclusion. Stranger Things, for example. Ending at the right time preserves the impact, while continuing unnecessarily risks weakening everything that came before it. So, do sequels ruin a franchise? Not always, but they can. Because the difference between a great sequel and a bad one isn't the idea of continuing the story, it's whether the story was worth continuing in the first place. Sequels don't automatically ruin a franchise, but unnecessary ones can, especially when they prioritize continuation over purpose. Now, when sequels evolve the story and respects its foundation, they can make a franchise stronger, but they exist purely to extend the success. They risk turning something meaningful into something repetitive. But there you have it. That is how sequels ruin a franchise, or do they? What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. But if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe, and comment what you would like to see on the channel. But I hope you have an amazing day as always, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye bye. Yeah.